So here we are in the big production garden. Sorry for the light. I thought we were gonna get more overcast. And right now the sun is out in full force, although it is October, so it's a little less insane than it would be if we were in July. But I don't have time to film this in the next 2 mornings, and so I kind of need to do it now. So we're just gonna make the best of it. But this is what the fall garden looks like. I have not mowed the aisles out here since the September video. So this is a month worth of weed growth in the aisles, which makes it hard to see where the actual rows were. But the aisles aren't irrigated, and so they stay pretty low. And we've had a lot of rain in the last week, and so I really haven't been able to mow because it's been way too rainy. So you're just gonna have to deal with the weedy garden, and that's okay. So starting here in the north side, this is my sorghum, and it's coming. It's gonna be down to the wire whether or not I'm able to harvest this before we get a frost. And if I don't make it, it's okay. I got it in really late, and I did buy a sorghum press. It's actually a cane press, but it should work with sorghum as well. And so if we manage to pull this off and actually get some syrup out of this, I'm gonna try doing it with an actual cane press this year instead of just boiling it. But we're not there yet. The seed on the seed heads here needs to be what's called milk stage, which means when you squish it with your fingernail, each one of those little seeds, what comes out is kind of a milky like substance, and they're not that mature yet. So we're not there yet, but they're getting there. If we get a couple more weeks before we get a frost, we might make it. It's gonna be close. It is just beautiful though, regardless. Very nice. This tail end of these 3 rows, we have sunflowers that volunteered that I just left in the ground. We have collards that are very aphidy that I've almost entirely ignored. We have beautiful chard that's very happy, and I should freeze a bunch of this before the season is up because it's finally looking stunning. And then we have the fall planting of cabbage. And unfortunately, you can really see the damage that's happening here. And that is, I can tell, see the little brown stuff in there? That's actually caterpillar poop. So this is from a cabbage moth. And somewhere on here, they're incredibly camouflaged. There's a cabbage moth worm, which is not a worm, it's actually a caterpillar stage of the butterfly, is on here just eating his little heart out. And I intended to get out here and spray these, and I just did not have time to mix up the spray that I wanted to spray. That was a combination of Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT, for the caterpillar moths, but also something for aphids. And so, but some of these, that's the worst one. This one looks terrible, but these guys don't look quite as bad. And a lot of times the damage will be mostly on the outer leaves. It doesn't go all the way to the center. And so you can peel off the outer leaves and still have something that's worth harvesting. And look, oh, there he is. There he is, you little bugger. So there's our green culprit cabbage moth caterpillar. I'm just gonna squish that. He does not need to be in there. And these little white, I'll see if I can spot one landing somewhere. The little white butterflies that are out here, they're the ones. There's one. Can you see that little white butterfly? That's the butterfly that's laying the eggs, that's making those caterpillars grow. They're very pretty little guys. So kind of a bummer, but it happens. BT is harmless to everything besides caterpillars. And so it's a great organic spray to use. And I will spray these today. I think today is going to be the day. This is a fall crop of cauliflower, which may or may not make it. It went in a hair late, but not bad. And they're getting some good size on them. Like at this point, you know, that's up past my elbow. So we're getting some good size. Again, a lot of damage. This bigger, wide damage that you see here, this is probably slug. The caterpillar moth, or the cabbage moth caterpillars, don't do as much damage. They don't make holes like that. But it's late in the season, so we're getting slug damage as well, and the slugs are big because it's late in the season. So cauliflower in here, it's a fairly short season variety. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get lucky. And then on the tail end here is a little bit of very late season broccoli. Same thing, we'll see what happens. But they're looking pretty good, and these can take a frost. And so the growth will slow way down, but they'll be good in the ground until at least November. And then everything else on these 3 rows that you see out here, this is my cover crop. And you can see how tall it's gotten if you go back and look at the September video. So we started out quite low, and at this point, you can see they're as big or bigger than those cabbages and cauliflower and broccoli are. So we're at a good 1.5 feet here, maybe 2 feet. So this has been good, and I'm not looking to harvest this. This is just stuff that will get tilled in or will die in the winter and then get tilled in. And so we're just looking to feed the soil here. And so it's not critical that anything comes to maturity, which is really nice because you can just enjoy watching it grow and not worrying about which stage it's at. This is a vetch, which is a type of pea. And so that is going to be feeding the soil because anything in the pea family does that. This is, that might be fava bean. I'm not 100% sure. It's some kind of a legume for sure. And then there's all kinds of, this is a pea. This is a field pea coming in here. And then there's also just things like oats or triticale. So got a nice crop. There's a few weeds. This is amaranth, also known as red root pigweed for obvious reasons. Totally edible, but ubiquitous out here. And then this is lamb's quarter. And I have a whole video on eating lamb's quarter. It's very similar to spinach. It's absolutely delicious. But that's also in here going to seed, and I don't worry about it too much. You can see if you just look at this row here, it's mostly out competing any of the weeds that are in here. Like I'm not seeing any amaranth or lamb's quarter in this section. So that's the whole point, is you plant it really heavily and it mostly out competes the weeds. So it's doing well. We're pretty happy with that. This is a weedy row. And I'm mostly going to ignore this because you guys have heard me talk about what's in here before and it hasn't gotten any better. Although this is rhubarb, it's looking very good. And then this is the Jerusalem artichoke, also known as sunchoke. And it still hasn't bloomed, but we're getting close. So I probably won't do a November garden tour because there won't be much left, but I will post some pictures on my Instagram when this does finally bloom. And I'm not sure, I've got a neighbor with some of this in their yard and his is blooming gloriously. I don't know why mine is so late to bloom, but it's getting there. And then of course, the tail end of all the sunflowers. This is gonna be a much faster garden tour. There's not a whole lot left out here compared to what was here before. These 3 rows were almost entirely alliums, various kinds of onions. All of the onions have been harvested. The only thing left out here, this is cilantro that I'm letting go to seed in order to harvest the coriander. And you can see we're getting nice and close here. That needs to be brown and starting to dry before it's ready to be harvested. And then the other thing that's left out here besides giant, glorious marigolds, which I still have going, and some coreopsis, is leeks. And so the leeks are ready. They could totally be harvested, but they also hold well. And so I tend to leave them in the ground until I'm ready to harvest them, till I need them. But here's an example. I mean, you can see like that's as big around, you know, I'm basically doing this. And so it's as big around as my hand. Some are going to be bigger, some are going to be smaller. That's okay. But this leek crop is still in the ground and looking good. And so I do still, actually the irrigation is just off out here because we've had so much rain that I turned everything off. We do have a few flowers still blooming. So this was a volunteer Nicotina. Wonderful, smells incredible. This is, calendula often gets a second wind in the fall. And I think this is strawberry calendula. I'm not 100% sure. I've got like 4 different varieties out here, but this is getting a second wind and putting on new blooms, which is beautiful. I've got a variety of different marigolds out here. And these were originally marking where the varieties changed on the onions. And so I had different kinds of onions out here, and I would put a flower in place to mark that. Here's another absolutely glorious calendula. I just love these, particularly the variegated ones. Like, I love all the different colors here and the fact that it changes depending on how open it is. Gosh, I love these. They're so pretty. Look at the color on the underside of those petals. I mean, come on, stunning. A few peppers in here. These are Aleppos, and I have so many Aleppo peppers at this point that I'm just letting these go. I'm not even gonna harvest them. I have way, way, way more than I need. And that's a very hard decision to make, but I'm just gonna let them go. Another marigold. And this was from a seed swap, and each one is just slightly different. And then we have some rosemary in here, along with gopher. That pile right there, that's gopher. We do have gopher issues. But 4 different rosemary. There were some volunteer potatoes in here. Potatoes came out. Rosemary's getting a lot more sun. And I will cut those right to the ground right before we get a frost, because they won't survive out here. We're cold enough that it doesn't typically survive the winter. This is another one of those Jolly Roger, I'm probably getting the name wrong, marigolds, but I love them. They are just so happy and cheery, and I love the different colors. All right, so that's all of those 3 rows. This was the melon row. It's incredibly weedy because I couldn't mow the edges because I didn't want to run over the edges of the melons. There are still, once they start sprawling, there are still a few melons out here. They're not great when they're this late in the season. And so a lot of times I just kind of ignore them, and then I may or may not harvest. If I do harvest, I'll cut them open and try them. And if they're not very good, sometimes they're just not very sweet and they're kind of mealy, I just throw them to the chickens. So this row is, I consider this row done at this point. So pretty much ignoring, although I did harvest and had a piece of melon this morning from a late season one that wasn't too bad. So, you know, they're not always terrible. This is the corn, which is completely done. And then this is the beans, which is ready to be harvested, but I need to get my onions out of my greenhouse before I can stow the beans in there. I pull the entire plant and I just stuff the plants into my greenhouse and let them dry in there. And then as I have time in November and December, I go in and pick the pods off of the plants, put them in a paper bag, and then I'll sit and watch television and shell them in the wintertime. But I have to get the onions out of the greenhouse before I can put the beans in the greenhouse. So we're not there yet, but they'll hold out here. They're okay, as long as we don't keep getting tons of rain. This was edamame, same type that I have in my raised bed garden. And you can see almost all of these have just opened up and spread their seeds. I didn't catch them in time when they were ripe. And so they got past the point of edibility as a green. And so now they're just spreading their little soybean seeds all over the place. And I'm fine with that. I didn't get a great germination on this, so I probably only have, there's probably only 8 plants in this section. And so they kind of got forgotten about. Look at this glorious, can you guys see that? This is borage. Oh, hello, Mr. Bee. And it volunteers. Once you have it once, it will just keep coming back, and you'll always have a few volunteers out here. And it doesn't love the super, super hot weather, but at this point, it's getting a second wind, just like the calendula is getting a second wind, and it's just gorgeous. And then over here, right next to it, this is catnip. And so the number of bees right now on this, both the catnip and the borage, they're very happy. So we're still feeding lots and lots of pollinators. This is a volunteer yarrow, and this is a colored yarrow. So this was an ornamental yarrow that I bought, and I adore this yarrow. Like, these shades of lavender and pink just make me so happy. And we have this all over the property. It is spread quite a bit, and we're totally fine with that. And we just mow it as needed, and it becomes a yard or ground cover. And this one, I don't even know how this got here because I've never planted it out in the garden. Well, probably because this makes lots of seed. But it is really, really pretty, and it makes lovely dried flower arrangements as well. So that's happening. Let's go through and look at the type of beans just for fun. So this is called Orca, also called Yin Yang. Can you see what's happening there? These seeds were probably 5 years old when I planted them, and I got decent germination. So aren't those pretty? I just love them. Like, I grow this one as much for the color as anything else. They're a nice bean, they're quite tasty, but so gorgeous. So that's Orca. And then I have a steak and usually a flower, although this flower might have conked out. Oh, no, there it is. So there's a portulaca in there. So in between, to mark again where I change varieties. This is the black beans, which is most of what's in this row. There's our black turtle bean. Those are ready. It's gonna be fun to harvest these because I've got some morning glory in here that I tried to pull it all out, but I missed a few, and boy, they just keep going. So here is another steak, and we switch to, I believe these are cannellini, which is a white kidney bean. And I have a hard time getting these to germinate some years. They're kind of picky. I tried to grow these last year and really didn't get much of a harvest. And so I replanted the ones I did get last year this year because the beans would be fresher. And I got some pretty good germination on these, so I should get a nice harvest from these. And then lastly, here's what's left of a snapdragon that was in here. And this one is a bit of a, it's not completely a bush bean. It does do some climbing. I think this is tiger's eye. There we go. And every once in a while, this one will throw a red bean, and it'll be in the same pod with the yellow beans. So it's really cool. I love that it's like 1 out of every 100 beans or so is red instead of this golden color. But this is tiger's eye. I love this. And I alternate which beans I grow year to year because they are good for 2 or 3 years. And so I'll just rotate through different ones. And what haven't I grown recently? And I haven't done this one in a while, but this is all tiger's eye in here. So yeah, beans are coming along. Excited to do that harvest. The sunflower row is done. Although, can you guys hear that goldfinch? There we go. So the goldfinches just spend the entire fall in here eating seeds, which is why I only have 1,000 sunflowers volunteering and not 1,000,000 sunflowers volunteering. And I just love them. So they're welcome to my garden. Pretty little display of sunflowers still coming on in here. This was a salvia that I just had extra. I grew this from seed this year. And so I just tucked them into some spots, and it's done very, very well. This plant has been quite prolific and huge. This is also calendula, and this is what it looks like when it's not a cultivated variety, when it's just the normal wild variety. It comes in this and orange, and I have a lot of this as well that just volunteers every year. And so these guys are getting a second wind as well. And I didn't even plant, well, maybe I did plant this, I can't remember. But these guys are just chugging along. The last of the basil, which I'm not gonna do anything with. It's surprising as much as this goes to seed. And if you've ever, so this is dry. If you've ever collected basil seed, yeah, there's one in there. I don't know if you can see that one little black seed right there. But not a ton of actual viable seed. And I've had Thai basil and Tulsi basil reseed like crazy. I rarely get reseeded sweet basil. So it's not nearly as prolific. If you do want to harvest this for seed next year, this is the stage that you want this to be harvested at. This is too green. It's not ready. When it's completely brown, that's when it's ready. And you literally just strip it off with your fingers and then kind of crush it between your hands. And the seed is heavier. You can see there's one in there. The seed is heavier, and so it will fall to the bottom of whatever container you have it in, and you can just kind of blow the rest of this stuff off. So you can save seed from your sweet basil and plant it again the next year. Works quite well. This was all brassicas, so this was mostly broccoli. We did just yesterday when we cleaned out the chicken coop. We pulled all of the giant broccoli out of here and layered it with the chicken manure that we were pulling out of the chicken coop as a green manure to throw into that compost pile. These were the cabbages that were the late season 100-day cabbages, and I picked the original cabbage. And now this is really common with cabbages. They will send off side little small cabbages. I always figured this is how Brussels sprouts started, was the plants doing this, and then somebody decided they wanted that. You can totally eat these. You just harvest them as a very small cabbage. And again, these plants will take a frost. Here's another one, you know, starting to come in. So it doesn't hurt anything to leave these and let them do their thing. So that's just kind of what I've been doing. Where's my quinoa? Here it is. This is the quinoa that I grew. And it's so interesting because it looks so much like lamb's quarter until it gets to this stage. And then it turns this golden color that is so unique that you can't miss it. And so I don't know. I'm going to just wait until we get a frost before I pull these off the plants. And then I'll have to look up kind of what to do with it in terms of how to harvest it. Unfortunately, this one got broken off probably from when we were pulling all the stuff out of here, or maybe something else, I'm not sure. So I only got a total of like 4 quinoa plants because I put them in really late and kind of forgot about them. These ones look more like they have powdery mildew. I don't know if these actually matured. It's very hard to tell. I think there's some seed in there. It's tricky. But I will do better next year. I'm going to play around with that. That was a lot of fun to grow it for the first time, just to see what the plants look like. More of those late cabbages. There's a really nice example of a cabbage head that's coming along there. And then this was all the broccoli that we just took out yesterday. So that's done. This was all potatoes. That is also all done, except for a few flowers that are still in here, and a couple of green onion plants that I'm just leaving. And then what we have left, and in the July video, I go through all the different varieties of peppers that I'm growing. But these next 2 rows are all peppers. And again, I'm using a flower in between to designate when I switch varieties, because that makes it really easy visually, especially when my husband is helping me. But I need to do a few more harvests out here. And then some of these I'm just done with and letting go. But lots of different varieties of peppers. This is a beautiful Kashmiri. Quite lovely. I think I'm going to do a Vindaloo spice mix that I'm going to sell this year out of some of these Kashmiri peppers that are ripe. So they're just gorgeous. Quite lovely. But yeah, coming along. I've picked quite a bit. And sold quite a bit. These are the Sugar Rush Peach, and you can see that one in there that's more peach colored. That's what they look like when they're ripe. They do take a very long time to get ripe, so it's been a slow burn on those. Some Thai, some cayenne, and then I had great visions of having 4 different colored jalapenos and selling those as a mixed basket. And I've done a little bit of that. Here's a regular green jalapeno. This turns red when it's ripe. This is actually not technically a jalapeno, but it's very similar in shape. This is called Hungarian Black. Also turns red when it's ripe, but it is this beautiful dark purple color when it's green, or when it's not ripe. And then this is pumpkin spice jalapeno, which is a ridiculous name, that turns yellow when it's ripe. And I just, unfortunately, these all got ripe at different times. And so it was very difficult to do like a mix. There's a yellow one just starting. I picked all the ripe ones out of here. There's one that's just starting. So it was really hard to do that basket that I had envisioned because they all had slightly different ripening times. And so I did pull it off, but it wasn't quite what I had anticipated because they were all a little bit different in terms of when they got ripe. This is my habanero, and habanero is a different genus or a different species of pepper than most peppers, most anums. And so I usually get a small handful that are ripe. So that one is ripe, but these take a very, very long time. They are not a fast grower. And in fact, I should do a search and see if I can find a habanero that has a shorter days to maturity on it. Maybe I'll get lucky. But I grow these every year, and I get, there's 6 plants in here, I think. And I get 5 or 6 ripe habaneros. So they are very hard to get ripe in my climate. We're just a little bit too cold. Dill, which I've mostly harvested all of the heads on that were mature. So I've got a lot of nice dill that I've got seed for. This is what it should look like when you're ready to harvest it. And this will reseed, and so some of these will just fall on the ground and reseed. Thai basil, look how beautiful that is. I mean, come on. Look at the purple color. Wow, that is just... And I watch You Can't Eat the Grass on YouTube, which is a flower farm up in Canada. And she uses this as filler in her bouquets, which is just brilliant because it is just so stunning. Wow, and it smells incredible. More anise hyssop, also just lovely this time of year. More calendula. And then this is the cucumber that is still going. I swear to God, I've been harvesting cucumbers off of this for at least 3 months. Oh, this is interesting. This is a really interesting type of chive or leek. And the reason that looks like that is because a gopher has eaten the bottoms off of this entirely. I can tell just by looking at it. I have 6 of them, so that's probably not going to be an issue. But man, my gophers have the worst breath of any critter in the neighborhood because they just eat garlic and onions like nobody's business. But that's interesting that that's gone. That just happened. Yeah, but this variety of cucumber still growing strong. I've made refrigerator pickles out of it. We've eaten a lot of them with just a quick pickle on various Asian dishes, which has been absolutely lovely. And then I've probably given as many to my neighbor as I've eaten because she really loves cucumbers and she'll eat them out of hand, whereas I won't. Oh, that's a problem. Goodness. Well, that's going to be a mess when I pick that. Kind of trapped in there. And then this is the lemon cucumber. And I also really like these, but I had too many cucumbers this year and I didn't really need them. And so mostly I've been feeding these to the chickens, and I don't think I'm going to grow them again next year because I prefer the other ones. But the plants are still producing, so that's good. Lovely, lovely snapdragons that are still hanging in there. I've harvested these for bouquets multiple times. And then the second row of peppers. This is tomatillos, which I just have let go. I stopped harvesting them. The plant on the end here, and then this plant, and those are 2 different varieties, just both conked out. Could be gopher eating the root. I don't really know why, but the plants just stopped producing. And then this wasn't looking super great. The one on the end was a purple variety, and I'd sold a ton of tomatillos, and so I was like, I'm just gonna stop. So I've just stopped harvesting these. Coming around to the side to look at the tomatoes. I am actually gonna harvest these today, but we're still getting tomatoes. They're still delicious. And I set up a taste test with some friends where we tasted every cherry tomato that I grew this year, and I had them rank them. Like, I wanted to know what their favorite red one was because I was trying to find a new red tomato. And so that was one of my goals. And then what was their favorite overall. And what was most interesting about it was there was no consensus. There were some general top contenders, But everybody has slightly different tastes in terms of what they like. And so there was a lot of answers in terms of what people thought was the best one. There wasn't one that was definitely the best, although the Sun Orange, which is down on that end, that one did come out pretty high. A lot of people really loved that. And so if I were gonna grow only one, that's probably the one that I would grow again. Although the seed comes from Osborne Seed and it is very, very expensive. But still getting some cherries. This plant was never happy and I stopped picking it because it's just been kind of sad. I'm not sure why. And then in terms of the slicers, these first two are Brandywine. There's still a few coming. There's a lot of splits out here right now because we've had a lot of rain in the last couple weeks. These two are Canner Whole. And I could pick these, you know, as they're blushing and just bring them in the house. But honestly, you guys, I am so over tomatoes at this point. I had way more than I needed and I just really didn't need to keep harvesting. I have canned and done a million things with them and I'm good at this point. So a lot of these will probably just go to the chickens. I'm gonna do one more small harvest today. This is Mortgage Lifter. I think if I grew one medium-sized slicer, well, all three of these are so good. It would probably be Mortgage Lifter, I think, in terms of productivity. I think the Mortgage Lifter produces more, but it's a really close run between that and the Canner Whole. They both are really great tomatoes. Canner Whole comes from Seed Savers Exchange. This is Valencia, a nice yellow tomato. Plant didn't do super well this year compared to previous years. This is not a Japanese trifle. It is supposed to be Japanese trifle. I got the seeds from Michigan Gardener, MI Gardener, and wrong seed in the wrong packet. Those are definitely not Japanese trifle. They did refund my money on those. I don't know what they are. It's just kind of a slightly bigger than cherry tomato variety and not all that excited. This one is Cherokee Purple. Plants and the fruit always look terrible this time of year. I always get a nice harvest early on and then they look like garbage, but I love the flavor enough that I keep growing them. This is Paul Robeson, and Paul was not great for me this year. He did much better last year for me than this year. I really love the flavor on the fruit on this, but not super big. And I mean, you can tell we've had rain. Look at all the splitting. It's like so many of these, that's not even remotely even turning and it's split. So lots and lots of splitting, unfortunately. Anise Noir. This is also called Pineapple. I love this variety. And this did pretty well this year. I got some nice ones out of there. Virginia Sweets. Also kind of a multicolored. This is a good indicative of this variety. Oof, that's a lot of splitting. Yeah, most of these I'm just going to leave. Dr. Wychee, always productive, very nice tomato. And then this was the other one from MI Gardener that was supposed to be Aunt Ruby's German Green and is very obviously not Aunt Ruby's German Green. It is some kind of yellow tomato, kind of akin to maybe Kellogg's Breakfast. It's not a Valencia, and I don't love the flavor on this. It's a little mealy, definitely not something I would save. So I'm not sure what it is, but don't want it again. They did refund my money on this one as well. I sent them photos of both of the varieties that were wrong in the pack, which is too bad because I love Aunt Ruby's German Green. That's one of my favorites. This is the San Marzano Redorta. And as you can see, most of the fruit on here is either cracked or at this point in the season, I've got a lot of blossom end rot. That one's got both. So I'm just letting these go. Again, I've canned and processed tons and tons and tons of tomatoes, so I'm not sad at this point. I have 3 Redorta in here. I generally like them because of the size of the fruit. This is a good example. Like if this didn't have rot on the bottom of it, that's a really, really big tomato versus the regular San Marzano I got from Johnny's, which is about the equivalent of one of these is about the equivalent of 4 of those. So if you're processing tomatoes, these are a whole lot less work for peeling. And then these are the last 3. These are the San Marzanos. And I might pick this one. No, I'm seeing a ton of splitting here too. We had so much rain unexpectedly after literally we've had less than an inch of rain since April. And then we got a lot of rain just in the last week. So a lot of splitting here. These are thicker skinned. So they're And the plants are super productive, and so they do hold better. I've had zero problem with blossom end rot, but flavor-wise, I don't love these nearly as much as I like these. I finally did a taste test side by side. The Redorta is much, much sweeter, and so in my opinion, just a better eating tomato as well. I'm gonna see if I can, I bought this Johnny's variety because I couldn't get the Redorta seed last spring, and I'm gonna make a bigger effort to find them this year. I don't know what causes this. It's clearly like something didn't quite let go on the blossom, and you get this funny little Michelin Man thing happening. I'm not sure what that's about. But yeah, so that's tomatoes, and at this point I am so over tomatoes. The one thing I'm thinking I'm gonna do is maybe some kind of V8 type juice. So I might do a picking today and just throw everything in a pot, run it through my mill to remove the seeds and the peels, and then turn it into a vegetable juice to throw into jars. And I do that every couple of years. I'm not a huge tomato juice drinker, but so that's it. That's the fall garden. And I am actually looking forward to the frost. You get to the point in October where you're just exhausted because you've just picked and picked and picked and picked and processed and processed and processed. And at this point, I'm ready to have a little bit more downtime. We're getting ready to take a vacation. For my husband's birthday, we're gonna drive to Yosemite, which he's never seen. It's gonna be fantastic. I might do a video on that just for fun. And so this is what's left of the fall garden. And mostly what's left is one more good pick and then some cleanup, and we're done. Thanks for joining me, you guys. I really appreciate you coming along for this growing season and seeing how things go. How did your garden do this year? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.